Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm reacting to Maya by Swami Sarvapriyananda. Hopefully I pronounced that correct. No one in the comments so far told me whether I said that correctly or not. Let me know. I'd like to try to pronounce it correctly, even though I just call him Swami. So anyways, this was a request. I do request. If you have a request, please leave it in the comments below. Please leave the name, the YouTube channel, and the length so I can search for it and find exactly what you want me to react to. You can leave the link, but there's a high chance that it might get put for held for review because people promoting their own channels or whatever. I don't know how YouTube does all that. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started. Hopefully I can just leave this into 2 parts, not 3. That is a very long name.
Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Good morning.
Good morning.
This lecture today is the second in a series of talks on Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga. So the first one was last month. I think it was called Our Real Nature. And this one is Maya. I've never spoken on this subject earlier. It's perhaps the most difficult subject that I have ever taken up. So be ready to go away with a headache.
I wonder why it's the most difficult subject.
Brahman is very simple. Maya is complicated.
Really?
Swami Vivekananda devoted 3 whole lectures on Maya in his series of talks on Jnana Yoga in London. In fact, the house where he gave those talks, it's still there. And if you go there, they have a blue circle system in the United Kingdom where it's a heritage place. It says the Hindu philosopher and monk gave talks here in this house. It's there in London. Manmatanath Ganguly, one of Swami Vivekananda's disciples, approached him once. Swami Vivekananda was very happy with him and said, ask for something and I'll give it to you. And asked me a question. So Manmatanath asked, I have read your lectures on Maya, but I want to know about it more fully from you. Please tell me what is Maya. And Swami Vivekananda said, ask something else.
I figured it would be saying something like that. It's like, that is too much. As anything else.
But Manmata persisted. He said, if I cannot know this from you, from a guru like you, then I will never understand it in my life. I have got a guru like you, and this is something that I want to know in my life. Then Swami Vivekananda started speaking, and Manmata has his reminiscences. We learned about it from there. He started speaking. After some time, Manmata said, it's as if literally, not even as if, literally the world started spinning around him and it dissolved. He says, he gives an example. I don't think it's there in the English translation of his reminiscences. In the original Bengali, it's there that when you look at a fire, and just above a fire there is, if you see because of the heat, there's a shimmer. The world seems to come in and out of focus. So the room around him, the place around him, seem to vibrate, come in and out of focus. It's as if it's disappearing. After some time, Vivekananda himself disappears. Manmata's own body has disappeared. He's just hearing the voice of Vivekananda. And then he bursts out. He says, he bursts out in a high-pitched voice. He's saying, all this is Maya. Even you, what you are doing, all this Ramakrishna mission, the monastery, all your work, this is all Maya. And Vivekananda, so he says this, and suddenly he realizes, in Bengali, in Indian languages, there are different ways of saying you. In Old English also there was thou and you. So you say apni to somebody who's senior. So Vivekananda is his guru. He should have said apni, but he said to me. To me means you, when you say it to somebody who is your inferior or to a child, somebody in any way, certainly not your guru. He realized he had said to me, to Vivekananda. The moment he realized this, the sense of difference comes and the world snapped back into place. And Vivekananda is there sitting at him and looking at him and smiling. And Vivekananda said, "You are right. All this is Maya. And if you do not like this play of Maya, then go into the Himalayan fastness and meditate and merge into Brahman. But if you cannot, then come and help in this work." Unfortunately, what Vivekananda said, Manmat has not written that down. So I don't think I can deliver that to you today to make the world disappear. But I think I can reasonably promise you a fairly intense headache today. But Vivekananda's lectures are there, the talks on Maya. So today's talk is based on what Vivekananda said about Maya in 3 lectures. I'll try my best to summarize what he has said. Vivekananda spoke about Maya in a refreshing new way, in a very direct way. Those who have read those lectures, you will never forget, and this is Maya, and this is Maya, and this is Maya. To understand his approach, the refreshing, the new, the novel in his approach to Maya, one must first take a look at the classical approach to Maya. Now, Maya is an ancient word, and it is accepted by all schools of, just about every school of Indian philosophy, Hindu and Buddhist. But the way the non-dualists, Advaitins, talk about Maya, that's what we're going to talk about today, that's unique. That's different from the other schools. In general, the schools of Hinduism, the Tantra, the Vaishnavas, they all accept Maya as the power of God, Shakti. So the power of God to create, and it's a real power, and God's creation with Maya is a real creation. Here is this universe. God has created this universe, and this is the way it is understood in the other schools. But this Maya takes on a unique approach in the approach to Maya in Advaita Vedanta is unique. In classical Advaita Vedanta, what is Maya? Let's quickly take a look at it. And then we will go on to Vivekananda's approach to Maya. The literature on Maya is vast. In fact, there's more written on Maya than on Brahman. There's more written on falsity than on reality. The unique approach to Maya in Advaita Vedanta is encapsulated in the central teaching of Advaita Vedanta. Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya Jiva Brahmeva Napara. Brahman alone is the reality. The absolute, existence absolute, knowledge absolute, bliss absolute is the only reality. Then what is this world? This pluralistic world, this variegated world which we see spread out before us, what is this? So this is Jagat Mithya. It's an appearance. This Mithya is another name for Maya, that it's an appearance of Brahman. It's not real in itself. What are we then? Are we real or an appearance? Jiva Brahmeva Napara. You are none other than that absolute. You do not know yourself. If you really knew yourself, you would realize, Aham Brahmasmi, I am the absolute, of which the universe is an appearance. So this is a unique formulation. The non-dualists have this, Advaita Vedanta, and it got the non-dualists into no end of trouble because they were immediately, fiercely attacked by the other schools, the orthodox schools of other schools of Hinduism, the dualists, qualified monists, and so on and so forth. In fact, it led to a tremendous flowering of philosophy. If we look back upon the history of Indian philosophy, you can see 3 periods of glorious development, tremendous flowering and richness. One is at the dawn of Indian philosophy, when from the Vedas, philosophy emerged, darshana. Darshana means philosophy. Darshana literally means to see. To see. Darshana emerged. That was the age of the Sutrakaras, those who wrote the sutras, the aphorisms, the Nyaya Sutras of Gautama, the Vaisheshika Sutras of Kanada, the Yoga Sutras, which are very famous, even now they are studied, the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, the Sankhya Sutras of Kapila, which are lost, the Purva Mimamsa Sutras of Jaimini, and the Brahma Sutras of Vyasa, Badarayana Vyasa. So the age of the sutras, that was the beginning of the different schools of philosophy. The next great period of development in Indian philosophy came a few centuries later with the emergence of Buddhism. So Buddhism was such a strong challenge, powerful challenge, Purva Paksha, powerful challenge to the orthodox schools of Hinduism. So that set off 1,000-year debate. I kid you not, 1,000 years. From about a couple of hundred years after the Buddha till around the time of Shankaracharya, just after that. Nearly 1,000 years in which the Buddhists attacked the two most precious beliefs of the Hindus, the belief in an immortal soul, Atma, and the Buddhists said Anatma, no self. And God, that there is a God, Ishvara. The Buddhists are agnostic about it. Well, they may be, who knows? Not interested. Doesn't matter. So this huge debate, which sparked off for 1,000 years, the Hindus trying to defend the theses of an immortal soul and of an eternal God, all-powerful creator, and the Buddhists attacking them relentlessly. And both sides developed. It was like a philosophical arms race. Both the logic developed, the philosophy of language developed, the methods of interpretation of the scriptures developed. On the Hindu side, the Nyaya school and the Purva Mimamsa school were the two primary schools which developed a lot of philosophical literature at this time. But that does not concern us. The next burst of development of Indian philosophy was...
Sorry, I wanted to pause a little bit. So that's actually an amazing thing to have a discussion. Hopefully that was the attack was talks and not physical. And that actually, I think, like he was saying, the development of different kinds of philosophy, which is good because when you attack ideas, it either can strengthen the idea or weaken the idea. The more attacks that you... Which is, again, how I think. It's like whenever I bring up an idea, I attack my own ideas. I try to find all weaknesses. And if it utterly fails, then I cannot believe in that idea. But if I attack it with everything that I know, my experience, and it succeeds, that idea becomes so much more stronger. A stronger belief in the idea. It's never going to be absolute because I could never attack it from... I could never think of all possible scenarios for it. But I can hold a very strong belief in it because, as far as I can tell, all my knowledge and experience has not been able to break it down. And this is kind of how I'm seeing this, where you have, kind of like in my mind, but you have two sides where just an idea is brought, and both sides, one tries to strengthen it and one tries to break it down. And if the strengthening side strengthens it so much and the side that tries to break it down fails at it, that means the idea is very strong. But if the side that breaks it down is much stronger than the side that strengthens it, then the idea is weak. And it should not be taken seriously because it does not have enough backing or any kind of argument against it. It has no defense against it, therefore it gets broken down.
After Shankaracharya, so when the dualists, now it's within Hinduism, the dualists attacked the non-dualists. So this continued for about 500 years after Shankaracharya, where they tried to attack the Advaita, non-dualist school, and most of the attacks were concentrated on the non-dualist formulation of Maya. So Maya, they immediately saw this is the weak link, and this is where the attacks have to be concentrated. So what was the Advaita formulation of Maya? What is Maya?
Well, I mean, Maya is the whole reason of the dualist. Dualist and non-dualist. I do believe, right? I mean, Maya, if the last video, which hopefully if it comes out in order, is the fact that the Maya is the illusion, that this world is an illusion, it's not reality, that the Turiya itself, or the consciousness, God, or spirit, is the true self, the true, or true everything. Don't know how else to explain that. But in Buddhist, I believe that this is all that we have, I believe, right? If I'm understanding it correctly, that this world is reality and there's nothing after, well, nothing after our lives here. Once we're dead, we're gone. So that's the reason, I do believe the reason for the attacks, because this reality itself is reality and not the illusion, which is trying to contradict the reality.
When we started studying Advaita Vedanta, our introductory textbook was Vedanta Sara, which is a rather boring, dry little book. It's like a book of definitions. It gets you, but it gives you a solid foundation for studying classical non-dualism, classical Advaita Vedanta. In that, there is a definition or a description of Maya. So we had to learn it, memorize it. Remember, in the Advaita point of view, Maya is at its core, Maya is nothing but ignorance. Ajnanam. Ajnanam means ignorance. Ignorance of what? Our true nature. We do not know we are Brahman, and hence all the problems. So you have to know you are Brahman. Ignorance is the problem, Maya, and Jnanam, knowledge, is the solution. So the definition of Maya is the definition of ignorance in Vedanta Sara. And it goes like this. Ajnanam tu, ignorance is, or Maya is, five things. Sadasadbhyam anirvachaniyam. I'll explain. Sadasadbhyam anirvachaniyam. Trigunatmakam. Jnana virodhi. Bhavarupam yat kinchit. What does it mean? This Maya or ignorance, you cannot say that it is, seeing that once you become enlightened, it is not. One Swami put it very beautifully. This question about Maya. Why all this? How did the one become the many? One Swami said very beautifully. He said, on our side of enlightenment, when we are not enlightened, on our side we have the question, there's no answer. And on their side, after enlightenment, they have the answer, there is no question. So, sad asadbhyam anirvachaniyam. You cannot say Maya is an ultimate reality, because after enlightenment, there is no Maya for you. For you, the enlightened person. But you cannot say that it does not exist either, because seeing that we see all this. Our entire life is lived in Maya. So, you cannot say it is, you cannot say it is not. Sat asadbhyam anirvachaniyam cannot be expressed as is or is not. The second thing is Trigunatmakam. This is Maya. What is it composed of? Can you say, what is Maya made of? And the answer the non-dualists take from the Sankhya cosmology. 3 gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas. Sattva, rajas, tamas. I will not go into all this. We discuss it again and again. But this is something that we have borrowed from Sankhya cosmology. Sattva, rajas, tamas. 3 gunas. Maya is made of 3 gunas. Then, very important, jnana virodhi. Maya is opposed to knowledge. Opposed to knowledge is, you must understand carefully, Maya is that which is destroyed by knowledge. It's a fancy way of saying that knowledge removes ignorance. So what you are ignorant, what I am ignorant about, I need knowledge about that. If I don't know chemistry, then I'm ignorant of chemistry. So I need knowledge of chemistry. Yes. If I don't know French, I'm ignorant of French, I need knowledge of French. And that will remove that particular ignorance. If I do not know my real self, as Advaita Vedanta claims, I'm ignorant of my real self, then I need knowledge, jnanam, of my real self. And that will remove ignorance. So ignorance is jnana virodhi. It is cancelled by knowledge or negated by knowledge. That's another characteristic of ignorance, of Maya. Then the next one is bhavarupam. These are all very controversial. Bhavarupam. It's not an absence. Ignorance is not just an absence of knowledge. It's a positive something. Why a positive something? Because in Advaita Vedanta, Maya has 2 functions. It does 2 things. One, it obscures the reality, Brahman. It veils the reality. It does not allow you to know yourself as you are. One. This is called avarana. And the second one is vikshepa. Vikshepa means error. It projects the reality as it is not. It's not so difficult to understand. I see a snake by mistake. It's a rope. I did not know the rope as a rope. Veiled. And next what happened? Because I did not know the rope as a rope, I mistook it for a snake. You can mistake it for something else also. So you mistook it for a snake. So that is projection, error. That is called vikshepa.
I talked about that example in one of his videos, as a matter of fact, how you also have to understand probability as well. You know, if you live in an island that literally has no snakes, you cannot confuse a rope to a snake. And if you work in a rope factory, you would safely assume, even though you don't know what it is, to be a rope. But I completely understand what he's saying, because he's basically saying that if we don't realize that what we're in is a falsehood, we are mistaking ourselves as we are the true selves, our real selves, when in fact we are not. Our selves is not our true selves, but a false reality, which I understand what he's saying.
Two functions.
Actually, now that I thought about that, I'm wondering if the non-duality will, the duality will say that because we know ourselves, that this is our true selves.
Sri Ramakrishna, in his beautiful example, he says, one of the functions of Maya is avarana. It hides the reality. And he gives a beautiful story from Ramayana, where Rama and Sita and Lakshmana are on their way to the forest in exile. And Rama walks ahead. Here Rama is Paramatma, the Supreme Self. And Lakshmana is Jivatma, the individual self, us. And Sita is the veil of Maya. So she is in between, and Rama is in front. And us, we the individual beings, Lakshmana is at the back. And Lakshmana can see Rama only if Sita graciously steps aside and lets him see. So that's Sri Ramakrishna's beautiful example. In fact, when I was preparing this talk, I looked up what Sri Ramakrishna had said about Maya, and really, that's a subject in itself. We should have a separate lecture on Sri Ramakrishna on Maya. Very beautiful things. We have discussed it from time to time. He speaks about the serpent, the cobra, which has poison in its mouth. A little bit of that poison is enough to knock out a mouse or a frog. But all the poison is in the mouth of the cobra, but it doesn't do anything to the cobra. It's the power of the cobra. So Sri Ramakrishna says, Maya is the power by which we are all deluded. We are trapped in samsara. But the entire power is wielded by God, Ishvara, Saguna Brahman. But Ishvara is not trapped by Maya. So that's an example he gives. Another example he gives is when the water is muddy. He says it does not form a good reflection of the sun or the moon. The sun or the moon is not reflected properly in muddy water. But if it's clear, then the reflection is good. Similarly, he says, in the mind deluded by Maya, Atma Sakshatkara, the realization of the self, it's not clear. Atman is right here, but it's not clear. Covering. This is avarana, veil. Another very simple village example he gives. For this, you have to see villages in Bengal. There are lots of these little ponds. They're called pukur. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna's birthplace, Kamar Pukur, it's a pond, a village pond. And you must know that Bengal is a very fertile place. I mean, it's always overgrown. It's luxurious there. So the ponds are often covered with a kind of creeper, a water plant. It covers the surface of the water. Pana, he says. Hyacinth. It's hyacinth. And Sri Ramakrishna says, you can't see the water. When you go and push it aside, then the sparkling water underneath you can see. But the moment you let go, it dances. He says it dances back and covers everything. Similarly, he says that when you are, contemplating Vedanta, when you're in holy company, when you're meditating and praying, it seems to disappear. Samsara goes away. But moment you let go, it dances back into you again. So these are the examples he gives.
So this is one thing I like about Swami. He gives out really good examples that even like the first example I didn't quite understand. I think he was talking more of exactly what the person was saying, the example, which I think a lot of people will understand, and but there will be a lot of people who aren't part of the culture will understand. And he gives another example about muddy waters, which actually makes perfect sense. Everyone in the world, seen muddy water, and it's not a very clear reflection of anything. So I'm glad he gives examples that a lot of people will generally understand.
The two functions of Maya, Vikshepa and Avarana, veiling and projection. How can it have two functions if Maya is nothing? It must have some kind of positive entity. Remember, I'm talking about the 5 characteristics of Maya in Vedanta. So one characteristic is Bhava Rupam. It has a positive dimension, that it is a positive entity. There is something called Maya. It's not just an absence of knowledge. When you say ignorance, you can say ignorance is an absence of knowledge. But no, the non-dualists hold that this Maya is not just an absence of knowledge. It's not that I don't know, that's it. No, there is a positive force which has these two powers. So it's called Bhava Rupam, as if it exists. And then finally, the last one, Yat Kinchit. It's a mysterious something. What do you mean it's a mysterious something? The description is that you cannot characterize Maya as it is this. In Sanskrit, idam itham, it is like this. You cannot say that about Maya. It's hard to pin down. And that's the very nature of Maya. Sri Ramakrishna talks about this. He says that it's like a man possessed by a ghost. He did not know he was possessed by a ghost until he thinks about it and it leaves him immediately. We say it, it's a figure of speech. Whatever possessed you, we say. So when you look upon it, it suddenly disappears. So Maya is like that. Yat kinchit, which does not bear the light of reason. If you focus, if you reflect upon it, if you concentrate upon it, it vanishes. In Uttarakhand, in the Himalayas, the sadhus have a saying, the monks have a saying about Maya, about Agyan. They say, in Hindi first, अज्ञान को प्रतिष्ठित करने का कोशिश मत कीजिए महात्मा जी, अज्ञान को काटिए. Don't try to establish अज्ञान, ignorance. Try to cut down ignorance. Don't try to establish that ignorance is by these proofs. You can never do that, and that's not the point of non-dualism. The point is, there is something which we do not know. Let's try to know it. That's the thing. So these are the 5 characteristics, and I'll tell you why I'm saying all this. We are getting a taste of what the classical analysis of Maya was. What is the classical presentation of Maya? This is from Vedanta Sara, which was written about 700 years ago. And this idea of the non-dualists came under heavy attack by the other schools for nearly 500 years. And the non-dualists responded. So to get a taste of the kind of attack that came from the other schools, Ramanujacharya, who lived about 1,000 years ago, who wrote the commentaries, laid the foundation of Vishishtadvaita, qualified monism. So he attacks non-dualism, Advaita Vedanta. He attacks non-dualism in his masterpiece, Sri Bhashyam. So the style of debate in ancient India was that if we are going to have a debate, if you say something, before I reply, I must restate to you what you said to your satisfaction. Is this what you said? Do you have to agree? Yes. Then I can reply. You can see how many quarrels it would prevent.
Absolutely, that's amazing. Again, to understand what someone's trying to present before you reply back. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes, you understand it the best you can, and sometimes you can't exactly, like anyone commented on my video. I mean, they may understand me one way, but they may have misunderstood me. So they try their best to understand me, but they may not always get it right, and they make a comment right away without fully understanding me. Which again, is fine. I mean, so long as you try to understand me, that's cool. It's not like it's a debate or anything, but it can be, I suppose. But yeah, that is actually the most important thing to me. That's the reason why I always ask questions, because I want to make sure I understand people correctly before I try saying one thing or another. Don't get me wrong, I still sometimes understand them and think I understand them and make the assumption and then they correct me. So I can't blame anyone for misunderstanding people. I do it all the time too.
Most of the time when we're arguing, it goes into quarrel, develops into or degenerates into quarrels because I'm not really listening to what you're saying. I'm thinking of my reply, like this reply is going to blow you away. I'm not even listening to the other side. I'm just listening. Nowadays, it's like that. They call it an echo chamber.
Oh, yeah.
So we just listen to our point of view and then keep giving replies without listening to the other person. Look.
Also, echo chamber, you can say it to be where we hear other people who agree with us and then we listen to them because they're basically saying the exact same thing we are. So that's another echo chamber definition. Listening to people who say the same things you do and ignoring everyone else that says something else different.
Here you have to restate to that other person's satisfaction. Is this what you said? And then I'm allowed to reply. So Ramanujacharya, when he's attacking Advaita Vedanta in the classical style, he restates the position of Advaita Vedanta. What is Advaita saying, non-dualism saying? They are saying this. So in his book, it's called Mahapurva Paksha, the great opponent. Who's the great opponent? The non-dualists. And he does such a fair job of it. Often when people argue, you set up a straw man and knock it down and say, I won the argument. But here, Ramanuja gives a very fair statement. One of our Swamis, who's a great scholar of non-dualism and is a very staunch non-dualist, he admits that Ramanuja is a gentleman because he does a fair job of stating our position. Is this what you said? And we say, yes. Now listen. And then he proceeds to shred non-dualism to pieces over the next few pages. So his main attack is on Maya. Maya gets a poor bad rep, Maya is not all bad. Sri Ramakrishna says Maya is avidya Maya and vidya Maya. Avidya Maya is that which traps us in samsara. He says kama, krodha, lust and anger and greed and jealousy and pride. These are avidya Maya, the Maya of ignorance. But there is vidya Maya. There is the Maya of knowledge also, which is viveka and vairagya, the conviction that there is an ultimate reality, the dispassion for temporal things and trying to attain the eternal. So vidya Maya, and in fact the way out of Maya is also through Maya. Swami Vivekananda says you cannot escape the machine. You must learn how to work the machine. Then it will set you free. So give up avidya Maya, take up vidya Maya, which is basically what we call spirituality. And then the machine sets you free. So Maya is not all bad. But Ramanuja?
Ignorance is not all bad. That's weird to say. I mean, I guess, they say ignorance is bliss, which is kind of contradictory to Eastern philosophy, considering ignorance is, bliss is Turiya. Maybe there's other bliss that I don't know about.
Trains his guns on Maya. Sevenfold objection. If you listen to the objections, your whole understanding, your whole faith in non-dualism will be shaken. The whole house of non-dualism begins to tremble and crumble under these tremendous attacks. What are these attacks? 7. Sapta Vidha Anupapatti. The 7 great inconsistencies in Maya, he says. What are they? Just as a taste. I haven't started yet.
And this is during my earlier times. I was watching Richard Dawkins and other scientists along with religious people trying to debate each other. And this is the one reason why I wanted to read the Christian Bibles, to better understand it, so I can have better arguments for it and have better questions. Using, in a sense, their own book against them. Kind of like how people used to using laws against people. I mean, this is the laws that was created. This is the laws that you brought forward. Now I'm going to use it against you, and hopefully you realize why these laws are either bad or good or whatever.
But if you know this, it will give you a good insight into what Vivekananda was doing when he begins to say, and this is Maya, and this is Maya. What are the 7 great inconsistencies in Maya? Maya itself is inconsistency. So what are the 7 great inconsistencies in the theory of Maya? First, he says, the word he uses is anupapatti. Anupapatti means inconsistency or illogicality. So the first one is called ashraya anupapatti, the locus of Maya. Where is this precious ignorance of yours? Is it in Brahman? But how can ignorance be there in Brahman? Brahman is the absolute reality. It's like saying there is darkness in the sun. Can't be. But it can't be there in the jiva, in the individual being. There are only 2 places where ignorance can be. In us or in the ultimate reality. Where is it? But it can't be in us also, because
we are part of the
Brahman,
ultimate reality.
according to you, the non-dualists, Brahman alone is appearing as the jiva because of ignorance. So ignorance must precede the existence of the jiva.
Ooh,
Where is your ignorance, dear sir? This is ashraya anupapatti.
That's a good argument, because yeah, if non-duality, meaning that we're everyone, everything is in this ultimate consciousness, Atman, Brahman, I believe they're the same, if I remember correctly, and that's, I mean, I understand how he worded it and says, how are we ignorant when we are part of that? Huh.
Next, swarupa anupapatti. And what is this ignorance? Is it real? Is it unreal? What is the nature of this ignorance?
Is it real or unreal?
Swarupa. And there's a very powerful attack there. Then the third one, our answer was, if you now remember, it cannot be said to exist, it cannot be said to not exist. Sad asadbhyam anirvachaniyam. The third one is anirvachaniya anupapatti, an attack directly on this. What you are saying is a logical inconsistency. A thing is either true or false. In logic, there is the law of the excluded middle. You can't say it is both true and false. You can't say it is neither true nor false. No. So you cannot say anirvachaniya, that it cannot be expressed as is and is not. Anirvachaniya anupapatti. Third. Fourth, tirodhana anupapatti. It says, Maya obscures Brahman, ignorance obscures Brahman. How can the absolute existence, consciousness, bliss, how can it be obscured? How can you think of anything
absolute.
hiding, tirodhana means disappears, vanishes. How can Brahman vanish because of something like Maya? It's impossible. You might as well shut your eyes and say the sun has vanished. No. So the impossibility of Maya obscuring or veiling Brahman, tirodhana anupapatti. And then it goes on to speak about the bhava rupatva anupapatti. You said Maya is a positive something, because remember it has the function of obscuring and projecting. Yes, avarana vikshepa. But that's not reasonable. Ignorance is simply the absence of knowledge. You know or you do not know. You do not know is just the absence of knowledge. That's the absence of knowing is not knowing. What is this positive not knowing? Bhava rupatva anupatti. Then the sixth one, nivartaka anupapatti. What will remove this so-called ignorance? According to you, the knowledge of Nirguna Brahman, I am Brahman. What kind of Brahman? Brahman beyond all attributes, all qualities, all adjectives. But according to Ramanuja, who is a theist, the ultimate reality has many qualities. You can't talk about an unqualified reality, because there's a very logical point here. Anything that you know must have certain characteristics. Otherwise, how will you know it? How will you know it as? It is like this. So it means a list of characteristics. So Nirguna Brahman.
I wonder if he's talking about the same thing I was talking about, like the infamous pen discussions I always have. The reason why we have proper definitions for things so that we fully understand it and not confuse it with something else.
Brahman without any characteristics is impossible. There is no such thing. Only Brahman. Brahman means God. God has many characteristics. Omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence, all loving, all benevolent, and so on and so forth. Ananta gunagana, kalyana gunagana, he says in Sanskrit. Brahman is a repository of infinite auspicious qualities. So because there is no such thing as Nirguna Brahman, there is no knowledge of Nirguna Brahman possible, and so overcoming Ajnana is not possible. Nivartakanupapatti. And finally...
Oh crap. That last one. I'm sorry, I'm gonna rewind that because I gotta understand that part.
Remove this so-called ignorance. According to you, the knowledge of Nirguna Brahman, I am Brahman. What kind of Brahman? Brahman beyond all attributes, all qualities, all adjectives. But according to Ramanuja, who is a theist, the ultimate reality has many qualities. You can't talk about an unqualified reality because there's a very logical point here. Anything that you know must have certain characteristics. Otherwise, how will you know it? How will you know it as? It is like this. So it means a list of characteristics. So Nirguna Brahman, Brahman without any characteristics is impossible. There is no such thing. Only Brahman. Brahman means God. God has many characteristics. Omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence, all loving, all benevolent, and so on and so forth. Ananta gunagana, kalyana gunagana, he says in Sanskrit. Brahman is a repository of infinite auspicious qualities. So because there is no such thing as Nirguna Brahman, there is no knowledge of Nirguna Brahman possible, and so overcoming Ajnana is not possible.
Okay, I didn't quite understand that last part. I'm wondering, is he saying that if everything... It's something that I've said to my friend before, and that's why I had to rewind it to make sure, but I still don't quite understand that part. But if everything is Brahman, then we cannot say that it's Brahman because there's no characteristics that defines Brahman itself as something very specific. Again, like a pen. A pen is a pen. It will never be anything else other than a pen. But if we say everything's a pen, then it's kind of useless in a sense, because if you say pen, that could mean a cell phone, that could mean paper, that could mean a pen, that could mean a plug. If you say, then when you say I want a pen, then that just, what do you mean? Do you want a flashlight? Do you want a speaker? Do you want a Q-tip, battery? You know? Is that what he's saying? That if it doesn't have a very specific definition, then it's I don't have a freaking arrow key here.
Brahman. There is no knowledge of Nirguna Brahman possible, and so overcoming Ajnana is not possible.
Okay, there are words there that I've heard before, but I've heard it so few times I can't remember the definition of it. So again, I don't know if what I'm thinking he's meaning here, if I'm correct in that. I'm not sure. But it's kind of like with this is the part that I talk with my friend. So he believes there's such thing as luck, and I understand his definition, but my problem with the definition of luck is the fact that if everyone has 5% luck, then we cannot say that's luck because everyone has it. If it's something that's universal to everyone, then it is something that we cannot say this one person has more of because everyone has it. You know, it's kind of like that. I'm simplifying it so we can continue and I can stop talking.
Nivartakanupapatti. And finally he says Nivrityanupapatti. There is no possibility of going beyond. If there is such a Maya which you are speaking about, beginningless Maya, there is no possibility of going beyond this Maya. If it is there, you are finished. You are forever trapped in it. And there are reasons why. Sevenfold. Tremendous attack. If you actually read the objections in detail, you'll be convinced. Gone. Non-dualism is gone. I remember, it's not related but funny, many years ago when we become monks, and these young people who become monks, immediately it arouses tremendous opposition among parents, and especially More than the parents, the uncles and aunties, and so often they come charging to get their boy back from the monastery. There's a story of, I don't know how true it is, somebody came saying, I want to talk to the person in charge here. They went to the main monastery because my boy has run away without my permission. So I want to talk to the person in charge so that he will send my boy back. Who is the person in charge? Oh, he's the general secretary of the order. But no good talking to him. Why? Because he also ran away from home without him. No, why I'm saying this is once when I was a novice, a new brahmachari in the place where I joined, another brahmachari, young man, joined from the same place I had come from. So his parents came looking, and his father was a big man in the police department. He came with a detective, fully convinced that his boy had been kidnapped. Now the Swami in charge, he said, I'm too busy he didn't want to speak with him. And then he said, you speak that language. He told me, you speak that language, go speak with them. And the boy, their son, disappeared. He didn't want to speak with his parents. He didn't want to confront them. So I was facing this really furious mother and father. Luckily, they didn't sick the detective on me. And the parents had come with all sorts of arguments, why you should not be a monk and why you should come back back home. And they couldn't tell their son, from whom they had prepared all those arguments. So they got hold of me. And they tried out all their arguments on me. Why you shouldn't be a monk and go back. Later on in the evening, the Swami asked me, how did it go? I said, I don't know about that boy, but I'm convinced. I told them, even if your son doesn't come back, I'm sold. I'm coming back with you. And in spite of their fury, they smiled. You will be scared if you read these tremendous attacks on non-dualism. You think that's gone. But wait, there are answers to all these questions. Remarkably good answers. In fact, it's available in English too. There's a book, 7 Great Untenables. Professor John Grimes, he's in Canada, in Alberta. He has collected all these arguments and given a very lucid English translation. So, and it's useful. If you read that, you begin to get a deeper understanding of non-duality. If your position is attacked and you can defend it successfully, you have understood your position even more deeply.
Exactly, exactly. That's why anytime I think of something, I always try to attack it first so that I'm prepared to answer at least the attacks that I thought of. That strengthen my point of view.
Get a much deeper understanding of non-duality when you face these questions and then you understand Maya in depth. Now, all this is very philosophical, tremendously dialectical, logical. What Vivekananda does is, you will see, same things, the same idea of inconsistency, contradictoriness, paradox. He brings it to our life. And he points out, in our life, instead of talking the language of logic, he points it out, the language of life, and shows Maya in our lives. One by one. And this is Maya, and this is Maya, and this is Maya. I counted 17 times. 17 times. Let me give you some examples.
Okay, before we get into that, I'm going to pause right here. It's already running a little long, so it's going to be a two-parter. Hopefully that's it, and if I stop talking. But I do want to, of course, express my opinions and stuff. And again, I'm glad he came up with that about the fact that duality and non-duality had an argument. I think, well, let's not say argument, a debate. Hopefully they're not screaming and punching each other, just talking it out. But that's the reason how I think. I always try to attack my own point of view as well, and that's the reason why I want to hear all sides, so that I'm able to attack from all sides of my own point of view. And I know obviously my experience and my point of view is very limited to what I personally experience. So I do the best that I can, and then I present it to people. I always talk to people about my ideas and stuff to see if they themselves can attack it, to see if I can't answer that questions or reinforce my belief. because it's the things I think of. It's never going to be like hard facts. There's without a doubt, it's never going to be like that. It's going to be the best I can present it with what I got, and then let's see if anyone can break it. That kind of deal. And I love that he brought that up, and I'm glad that has happened. That is something that's surely that is needed in the world. People just tend to believe in what they want to believe and say it. It's absolute fact. Belief without truths, belief without question is terrible. Really, really terrible. Just pure beliefs without any experience or fact or question being had at it. Anyways, that's part 1 of Maya by Swami Sarvapriyananda. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Thumbs up, thumbs down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.